Hey guys, welcome back to Faith Reheated. I am your host, Crystal Seidel. This is a podcast for lukewarm Christians and non-Christians alike looking to reignite their faith in Jesus. And today we're going to, with the election coming up, I am recording this episode before the election has happened, and I'm going to be releasing it afterwards. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing it before, so that way I don't have any sort of understanding of what's going on between the two, knowing which one has been elected, and just kind of further emphasizing my point of what this is going to be about. So today we're going to be exploring the biblical principles of respecting authority, even and especially when we don't agree with them. I know a lot of us, pretty much everyone, has either one problem with one or the other, or both. Like, there's not very many of us that have no problems with either of the candidates that are in this election. But we need to understand that even though maybe we don't agree with the one who gets elected, whoever it's going to be, we still need to respect our authorities. And as Christians and as the people who we claim to be, we should be extremely respectful to our authorities and to our world leaders and be praying for them constantly on either side. Something I thought was really, really sweet is I listened to the Girls Gone Bible podcast. They're really great, and I saw that they had actually met with Donald Trump and prayed over him with him. They all prayed together, and I thought that was just really amazing. Of course, I have my own decision, and I voted of who I want to vote for. And this episode will come a little too late for me to be saying this, but there's been a study that says something in a few million, like 57 million, I think, Christians are likely to not be voting. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people who should be voting the most, because we have, the certain morals of who we want in office. And if Christians aren't voting, then there's not enough people with those morals that a Christian should have voting. And so I think if you are a Christian, you need, next time, unfortunately, it will be too late now, and if you haven't, you need to vote next time. This is your right, but it's also your duty as an American to vote, and you need to go vote. But today, since it's already happened when this comes out, we are going to discuss respecting authority. We're going to discuss how to engage with our faith with these political challenges, and what it means to be a good Christian even when we disagree with our leaders. So the title of this episode is Give to Caesar What is Caesar's. I thought that was a really good thing to start with, because in the context of that verse, it's Matthew 22:21, and this verse comes from a discussion about paying taxes to Caesar. So Caesar was not like a good leader. He was pretty tyrannical, as most of the leaders were in Rome in that time. And Jesus was teaching on the relationship between earthly authority and divine sovereignty. All of our leaders were placed in their position by God. And if you go through the Bible and you go through the Old Testament, there's a lot of history where there's a lot of kings that should not have been kings. Like, they were just terrible. But God used them in their positions of power to do great things. Even though they were terrible, terrible people, He still used them to have great things happen, just like He does in our lives. Even though we go through horrible things in our lives, God will use the bad to create good. And that's what's going to happen, no matter what. So whoever gets voted into office, God will use them for His good and for our good in the future. Maybe it doesn't seem like it, or maybe it won't seem like that, but let God be God. Okay, so that's what we want to start with, is give to Caesar what is Caesar's. The disciples were complaining about paying taxes to a tyrant, pretty much, and God was saying, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. So even though maybe we don't agree with who is in office, we still need to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that will be put into law by whoever it is that gets elected is something that we should support. Support and respect are two different things. I believe in setting the certain boundaries is a very Christian thing to do. It's a good thing to set boundaries. And so if our government is telling us to do things that we know should not be done, it is okay to speak out against it. So what does the Bible say about authority? In Romans 13:1-2, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. In this verse, Paul writes about the need for Christians to submit to the governing authorities, emphasizing that all authority is instituted by God, just like how I was saying earlier, which underscores the principle of respect for civil leadership. So God placed who is in office right now, and so you fighting against it or disrespecting our leader, no matter who it is, you're going against what God has done. Again, respect and bowing down and worshiping is another thing. Just like Daniel didn't bow down to the king. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't bow down because we don't bow down to other people. We don't worship false gods. And they were punished for it, but they did the right thing. And even though they were punished for it, God was there with him in the fire. So we need to remember that always as well. And the second one, 1 Peter 2:13-17, be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution. This in context, I'm making sure that I'm going through context for all of my verses because I want to make sure that everyone understands where the verse is coming from. Because a lot of times we take verses out of context in the Bible and we just kind of say something, and because it fits into what we want to say or to like back up our point, and then we don't understand the context of what the whole story is, and that's not right. So I want to make sure that I'm giving context for everything that I say. But in 1 Peter, it is encouraging submission to human institutions for the sake of the Lord, focusing on being a good witness in society, even under oppressive regimes. If you look at people who are, in the streets protesting or rioting or doing really bad things because something is happening in the government that they don't like, protesting is great. Like, peaceful protest is a great thing. Rioting and looting and catching things on fire and overturning police cars is not. Even if what you think is a good cause or what you think is biblical and what you're fighting against is not, you behaving that way is making everyone look at Christians in a horrible way. If you're going out and overturning a police car because of abortion, you're the one that's going to be looked at badly, not abortion. So there are other ways that you need to be doing certain things to make sure that God is still being exalted and you are not in the spotlight. The key points. So again, God is sovereign over all the leaders, and the responsibility of Christians is to respect them and submit to authority. Talking about submitting, you see that a lot in the Bible, and there's a lot of tension about that word in the Bible, submitting. Wives, submit to your husbands. But again, in context, it's wives, submit to your husbands, and then the husbands need to be submitting to the Lord. If the husbands aren't submitting to the Lord, the wives don't have to submit to the husband. If my husband is being a psychopath and being horrible and telling me to do things that God isn't telling me to do, I do not have to listen to my husband. If the government is telling us to do things that we know we shouldn't be doing, we should not be listening to the government. If the government is following in the line of the law of God, then we submit to the government. I hope that makes sense. Okay. How to maintain faith when faced with unworthy leaders. A lot of us are gonna think that whoever is in office, I don't know who he's even gonna be. Again, it is November 2nd right now, so it hasn't happened yet. I actually have no idea who it's gonna be. It is so like crazy right now. I can't even begin to guess. But navigating bad leadership with unworthy leaders, all of us have a thought of who an unworthy leader, which one is the unworthy leader. And with a lot of people, both are unworthy. They are not fit to be running our country. And so going with that, Jeremiah 29:7 says, seek the welfare of the city, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. The context for this verse is part of a letter to exiles in Babylon. Okay, crazy things were happening there. Urging them to seek the welfare of the city they live in, indicating that their well-being is tied to the community around them. So even though maybe we have a bad leader or not, maybe it's going to turn out great, but even though we have a bad leader, we still have power as the citizens to help our country and to respect our country and to take care of the place we live. If we just forget about our duty to our country as well, it's going to fall apart. It doesn't matter how good of a leader is in office or not. If the citizens are revolting against the leader, nothing's going to get done. It's going to be a terrible situation. So in your community, again, you need to vote. Volunteer. Take care of the area you're in. Go volunteer to help clean the streets or something. If you feel like something is not being taken care of by the government and it's something you can do or try to set up something to do it, and it is your duty to do so. If you feel like, and this is kind of like a silly example, if you feel like there's potholes all over the place, find a way to get those filled. If you feel like, I don't know, there's a law that you are against, guess what? You can vote against those things when you get your voting packets. So there are things that you can do to make sure the welfare of where you live is partially in your hands, to make sure that it is good. So using that power that you have as a citizen to make sure it's good, even in the face of an unworthy leader making things not happen. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. This proverb contrasts the impact of righteous versus wicked leaders, and highlighting the importance of godly leadership. Obviously, like, everyone's going to be upset when there's a bad leader, and everyone's going to be super happy when there's a good leader. Unfortunately, we are pretty divided as a nation right now, and even though for a group of people the leader is going to be a great thing, and for another group it's going to be a horrible thing, there's going to be people groaning and rejoicing. I don't think we're in a time where someone's going to be in office and everyone's going to be happy about it. There's going to be people very, very upset. Whatever happens, whatever has happened, I don't know. I guess you'll have to tell me. But we need to, as Christians, find peace in the chaos of what is going to happen, regardless of who is chosen to run our country. Again, we need to show respect. If it is against something we believe, we need to vote against it, and we need to raise awareness for it. Not in a horrible way of shoving it down people's throats and posting on Instagram every other second and like fighting people and being harsh and rude and terrible, because again, that just brings God down in people's eyes. That's just like, oh, those Christians, like, they are the worst. And I'm sure you've seen it, like, people who fight against certain things, but they're so horrible about it, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You're like, okay, I don't want to see that. Even though it's something you believe, you're like, it's too much, it's not good, and it's just making people look at us in a horrible way. Doing things in a way that brings God up, not brings you up or shows how much you know about the topic, but bringing up in a peaceful and loving way. It's really important. And then there's the call to pray for our leaders. Again, like I said in the beginning, whoever it is, we need to be praying for them. Unfortunately, we saw in one of Kamala's rallies, someone yelled out in the crowd, "Jesus is King," and she said that they were in the wrong rally and to go to the other one. Deny me in front of the world, and I will deny you in front of my Father in heaven. Unfortunately, that was a horrible thing, and she denied God in front of everyone. Not even just like her friends or in a small group, but in front of everybody. And that is really bad, and we should be praying for her. We should not be attacking her. We should not be like going out and making this huge thing about what a horrible person she is. We should be praying for her, like, seriously and truly, because at this point, if that's what her heart is, Jesus will be denying her in front of our Father in heaven. Yikes. And if you're right now thinking like, good, like, that's a great thing, like, that's so exciting, you need to change your heart posture, because that is a horrible way to think. How horrible. You need to pray for her, and then you need to pray for yourself that you change your heart posture and to feel compassion for her. Because we should be increasing the kingdom of heaven, not judging and condemning to make sure that we're the filter. We're not the filter. We should be bringing everyone that we can to Jesus. Even our presidents, or not president, I don't know, vice president right now. Pray for her. Make sure she's in her prayers, and with Trump as well. He needs to be prayed for as well. There are some things that he has said and some things he has done. There are some good things he has said and good things he has done, but he needs to be in our prayers as well. We don't know where his heart truly lies, and he should be in our prayers always. Both of them should be in your prayers all the time. You should be praying for our leaders. It's very important. 1 Timothy 2:1-2. Paul instructs believers to pray for all people, especially for kings and those in authority, promoting a peaceful and godly life. I didn't write down the verse for that, but and then active participation in elections. Again, you need to vote. It is such a really sad thing that there are so many Christians that aren't voting because maybe they don't want to choose between two evils. That's what I've heard a lot, like it's two evils, so I don't want to choose either one. You need to still vote. There are a lot of things that as a Christian you should be against, and that you should be for other things that are very, very, very important, and that one side has and one side does not. And if you aren't voting, there are a lot of other people who are, that maybe don't share the same values that we do as Christians. Again, there's like something like 57 million. Like, that's a lot of people not voting. Christians not voting. There's a lot of people in general, but Christians that aren't voting. So think about it this way, like, as Christians, abortion is bad. We're very against abortion. So if you are not voting, 57 million people, and that's a lot of people in a vote, like in an election, that's a lot of people. 57 million. If we were here, 57 million people raises that by so much. And that could change the tide in a lot of different things. So if you haven't voted, you have the opportunity still for the next time, and now you know, and you can take a look at the laws that you have, and take a look at the things that are happening even in the local government, in the state, city, whatever, and you can make that change. Your vote does matter. So I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it. I think that sometimes, like, it doesn't even matter, but even if there's a chance that it does matter, you need to take that chance to vote, and you need to vote in alignment with the Bible, in alignment with this book. Matthew 5:13-16, "You are the salt of the earth, the light of the world." Again, if you're supposed to be the light of the world, the salt of the earth, and you're not doing anything, if you have a field and all there is sunlight with no water, things aren't going to happen. It's going to burn. You have sunlight and water, you have something beautiful. If you have just water, it's not going to be good. So you need to have those other people, and you need to have everyone coming together and voting for things to prosper and for things to go right. And if you aren't voting, that means that there is one less vote that is the light of the world and the salt of the earth. That's really bad. Wouldn't you want more of that? And you can be a part of that? Think about that. Micah 6:8, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." To act justly, I think, is the most important part here. Let's look at some context. So for Matthew, that was from the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus is calling out his people and the role of Christian influencing the world, how important it is for us to influence the world, calling them to live out their faith publicly. This is your opportunity to live out your faith, to choose somebody who aligns best they can. Neither of them are ever going to align perfectly. I don't think that's going to happen for a very long time. But to find the one that aligns the most and to take care of those really important subjects, and show your faith by choosing them. That's how you can live out your faith publicly. That's one way. And it's so important. Jesus literally calls you out to do so. He's calling you out to do that, and you're just gonna not do it. How hard is it to mark something on a piece of paper? Micah 6:8, the context of this verse encapsulates what God requires of his people: justice, mercy, and humility. And these are so vital. Our presidents should have these things, but us as citizens, we should as well. We should we can still take things into our own hands in certain things. And we should have these characteristics: justice, mercy, and humility. So just remember that we have that opportunity, and we should live that out and show and live by example, lead by example. We also, I know there's a lot of people that go a little too far with the politics, and it makes it their whole personality, and we forget that ultimately God is our leader, right? He's just appointed these people to lead over us for now. 4 years, think about 4 years versus eternity. Which one's more important and which one has more power? You need to find a balance and a harmony between your personal beliefs and your political beliefs and political realities and what's actually happening. In Galatians 5:13 through 14, for you were called to freedom. Through love, serve one another. Paul discusses freedom in Christ and to call others to serve in love, emphasizing community and ethical living. So again, like, we take it too far and we just bash each other, and that is why our country is so divided, because we have one side and we have another, and you cannot mix, and if you do, you're fighting. That's why we go to Christmas dinner and we have that uncle that is just a little too much on this side, or we have that cousin that went to this school and like, oh my gosh, they won't stop talking about politics, and then you have conflict. We should, of course, stand by what you believe and stand by what is right and good, but we shouldn't be having conflict and fighting and bringing people down because they believe something that we don't. We should be helping them and teaching, and again, leading by example to bring others to God. Philippians 3:20 is talking about our citizenship is in heaven. Again, like, we're only here for a little bit, and whoever's in charge is only in charge for like a max of 8 years. That is nothing in comparison to our eternity with God, our true leader, and who is the one who is going to be leading us forever, and who is leading us now, who should be first. This verse reminds believers that their ultimate citizenship is in heaven, encouraging a focus on spiritual values above political affiliations. So if you're like, oh, I'm for Trump, and you have the hats and the shirts and the flag on the back of your truck, but he also has policies that are against what the Bible says as well, you need to separate yourself from being this and being a Christian. And the same thing with Kamala, like, you need to separate yourself and understand what is God's law and what is your beliefs and what the law of the land is. Understanding the difference and knowing which one to follow. Which one's more important to follow? God's will, not Trump's will, not Harris's will. God's will is always first. And that's why our leaders should be following in God's will. And then we can submit to them. Excuse me. So, again, just to like wrap it all up, we need to pray for our leaders. If you shouldn't be praying all the time, but if you pray like nightly before bed, they should be in your prayers before bed. You need to pray before you vote, and you need to vote. Next election, things happen all the time. I think in like 2 years is another voting thing. If there's voting that happens throughout the year on certain propositions or whatever, you need to vote. Put yourself in 10-minute frame, do a little bit of research, and vote on what aligns with God's will, and you need to do it. It is so important, and honestly, it's kind of fun. I did not vote for a long time. I was like, hey, voting is dumb, and my vote doesn't matter, and like, it doesn't even matter if I do it or not. But I have changed my ways, and I voted for the first time in a presidential election this time, and it felt really good to do so. I don't know if it's gonna matter, but I know that I did it, and one drop in a bucket adds up. And that's how you get a full bucket, right? So if you have one person and a bunch of people do one thing, it makes a huge difference. And then respect for our leaders. No matter what happens and no matter who is in office right now, we need to be respectful, and we need to bring people together instead of dividing everybody. That is not what we need to be doing. We do not need to be bashing people. We do not need to be bashing our leader. We do not need to be bashing anyone's beliefs. So there is right and there is wrong. It is not your job to filter who comes to Christ. It is your job to bring everyone, and Jesus does the filtering. You bring everyone that you know. You bring everyone that you don't know. You bring everyone to God. You bring it all to the foot of the cross, and then he filters out when he needs to. It is not your job, and it is wrong of you to think it is. So that is my episode today. I hope that it helps, and I hope that for those of you who are a little extreme in the political arena, that you can continue to do so if that's your calling, but understand where you should be and whose law you should be ultimately following and who you should be exalting above all else. It is not Trump, it is not Harris, it is not any vice president, it is not any mayor or governor. It is Jesus above all else, and everyone else falls into line under him. And if they don't, it is his job to judge them, not yours. It is your job to be righteous and to have justice. It is not your job to filter out. Okay? So keep everyone in your prayers, keep the president in your prayers. And that's it for today. If you have any questions, if you have anything to say about what I said, put it in the comments or shoot me a message. I'm on Instagram at Faith Reheated, and I would love to hear what anyone has to say. And subscribe, like and subscribe, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye!